So before we get into the program today, let's do a quick show note. There was a slight glitch on my end with the recording volume with our guest's audio levels, so it's kind of goofy until around the 4-minute mark. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, the audio is not up to snuff or par or whatever, I tried to adjust it as much as possible, but just fast forward to about the 4-minute mark and that'll get you where you need to go, and the audio level should be fine by then.
Hey there, Danny with Right Foot Down. I messed up this ad read so many times because I really want to tell you about Track Monkey Apparel. They make great quality enthusiast shirts along with hats, stickers, watches, patches, you name it. A couple of my personal favorites are their Life is Better at the Track tee and their One Track Mind tee. You should really check them out and see for yourself. Their products are great for you or the gearhead in your life. Visit trackmonkeyapparel.com.
You're listening to the Untitled Car Show in partnership with RightFootDown.com. Visit Right Foot Down for your daily automotive fix. If you enjoyed today's program, please tell a friend. It's the best way to support this show. If you want to visit the archives, go to YouTube and search for Untitled Car Show. That'll bring you to the archived episodes. If you want to follow the show, just search for Untitled Car Show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can always send an email to the show at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. We're so glad you decided to spend the next hour or so with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's program.
Okay, go right ahead.
All right, so this is the Untitled Car Show. I'm your host, Ike. We have Ryan Brutt today. I probably screwed that up again somehow. He is the author of the wonderful book Muscle Car Barn Finds. It's his second book in the series, and he also has some wonderful photos on social media as well. And if you are not following him on the social media platforms, and if you're not reading his book, well, then you're doing car enthusiasm wrong. Ryan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, Ike. How about yourself today?
I am doing... It's a little hectic, but not more so than normal. It's just how it is. So I won't regale our audience with the tale of woe and poop that was my day. So
I understand, man. I understand. And you did get my name right, so you're all good there.
Excellent. Stop clock is right twice a day or something like that. So it's funny because behind the scenes, I always ask, even if I'm pretty sure I know the name, I always go, how do we pronounce it? I write it out phonetically, and then I look at the way I wrote it out phonetically and go, I have no idea what I just wrote. So that's how you get to do, great interviews with people like yourself and, all sorts of wonderful people in the industry. I'm just shocked people keep listening to this. So,
well, man, I hope you need to set your sights a little bit higher than the greatness of me. I'm pretty far down the totem pole that I hope you have a little bit better quality than my usual drivel.
Nah. It's what's weird. So one of the interesting things I get to do here is I get to, make, I would say, at least acquaintances, if not friends, with people all over the industry. And, sometimes the platform they have transfers really easily to podcasting, like a lot of... there's a lot of tweet people out there who are known for their social media, or people who are known for maybe some video stuff, or maybe other podcasting stuff. And it's when we had you on last time, I hope people liked it and downloaded fairly well. And it's such an interesting thing to bring someone of your expertise, which is, I would say, you take some of the best, photographs in the industry and bring that over into the, audio realm, which is kind of, completely different. But I think part of what makes you can cross over, because you do write these wonderful little stories about how you found the vehicles and where they're going, and, bits on the owners and whatnot. So that's my long rambling way of that's my long rambling way of saying, if you like the way he sounds, his photographs are twice as good, and you need to read the book. So let's talk a little bit about the book and maybe what's different from this one from the last one you'd put out.
Well, this one is really all about muscle cars. The last one had a little bit of everything, pre-war, right after post-war, 5.5 Chevy. This one basically focuses on everything between 1964 to there even is a few, Buick GNs from the 80s and such in there, but it really focuses on the muscle car era and really cool stuff that's been sitting, neglected. And I've been fortunate enough that in my travels, especially over the last just 2 to 3 years, I've been able to collect a lot of really cool imagery with cars like that. And that's basically it. This book is just about the first one was about the first 10 years and me handpicking out of thousands of images, some cool stuff. And this one is basically only the last 2-3 years of just muscle car stuff. And there's some really cool stuff in there.
Yeah, what would you say is your favorite car of the new book?
Oh, man, I got so many in there. There's a Hemi Cuda, a 1970 Hemi Cuda that's been sitting in a garage in Detroit since 1976. It had just been pulled. I just missed it because of timing, but the guy had just pulled it out of the garage. It was the son. The father had died. He was the original owner. This car is so low miles. It had still the plastic tags on the exhaust. And the car is, it's a little, it has a little bit of rust here and there, but it's a bright red car, red shaker. And like I said, it's like 30,000 original miles. Never really left the Midwest, and it's unknown. And it's a two-fender drag car, which in Mopar circles is very high options, and it's never been seen other than by a handful of people. And it even still had the bicentennial 1 year only Detroit plates still on the car when it was put away. And it's just like, wow, this thing is a true time capsule. Just sitting in a garage in Detroit, it blew my mind. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And it's crazy to me. I know we talked about this a little bit on the last time you were on the show, that you have this ability to find these vehicles through, well, basically just is like word of mouth. Since the last books come out and kind of like, it's been just over a year, I think, since you've been on. It's, do you think the word's gone out, like people are coming to you like, hey, I got this barn find? Are you finding more people kind of opening up to you, or are you still having to kind of scour, the back of like local gas stations for like, hits and tricks and, all that?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I do absolutely have, I don't know if you didn't mention this, but I also write for Hot Rod Magazine every month. I do a barn find column in there, so that definitely gets me a lot of exposure. And people do come to me regularly saying, hey, I saw your article, or I saw your book, or I have a YouTube show that I do, and hey, I saw that you found this, let's say Hemi Cuda. Would you like to come see my 69, Camaro SS sitting in the barn? I'm like, absolutely. And while unfortunately my schedule and time, it's not really time, but I have no life, but, I have to schedule things very carefully so I can do as much as I can in a short amount of time. So I have an online map, a private one, that I'm able to pin all my finds onto. And I have something like 2,000 on there right now. And this allows me the opportunity to visually see where these things are in the country and plan accordingly. Like I'll do trips, let's say I have 20 new ones in Iowa. I'll plan a trip so I can do a big loop through Iowa and hit up as many as possible. And that allows, and that's from people telling me that they have stuff. Or on the flip side is, like if I'm going to, like I went to a graduation last year and I was going to Ohio. And I'm like, I have a full day ahead of me of nothing to do other than drive there. So I'll meander my way, through Indiana and, Illinois and all this stuff to Ohio. And I go to the oldest parts stores around, talk to the old guys behind the counter and be like, hey, you ever hear of anything cool? This is what I do. And they'll go to me and be like, hey, yeah, Steve down the road had a GTO, and I haven't seen that thing in like 30 years. I bet he still has it. Yeah, he lives, 3 blocks down on Main Street, blah, blah. And that's how I started out, and that's what I still do to this day if I have the opportunity.
Has there ever been a time where you just missed something? Like, someone, not that there's a lot of people in the field here, but like someone, passed away. You heard about like, oh, there's this car, it's sitting in a barn. You go to look at it, and by the time you get there, the next of kin maybe pull it out and put it up for sale somewhere. Has there ever been a story of like, oh, I just missed that one? Is there one that got away?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And well, I do date what my finds, when I heard about this thing or that thing or whatever. And there are definitely times where, I'm late by, a year or 2 years even, because there are some parts of the country where I just can't get to very easily in the time frames that I have. Like I was supposed to go, there's a big Mopar auction coming up here in next week actually, up in South Dakota. And I was supposed to go up there and photograph the cars with a few other hot rod people. And every time I was supposed to go, it snowed. I mean, not like little snow. I mean, like snowstorm snowed in between me and South Dakota, so I couldn't get there. And unfortunately, now I've missed the opportunity to go see it. And that does happen, unfortunately. But on the plus side, there's so many cars out there, and I know of so much stuff. One or two things. Yeah, it's sad to miss, but there's plenty of fish in the sea.
Has there ever been one where you go to see like, oh yeah, I think Craig had like something and like it was a Pontiac and once it was like a goat and you show up, it's like, oh, that's not a goat, that's like a Fiero. Like, has there ever been like a bait and switch happen to you?
Well, yeah, but it's more of people not just knowing what they have. I mean, the people, their friends. I had a guy who said he had a 53, his friend had a 53, 54 Chevy two-door, and I'm like, was it the little one, like a little car, like a tiny little fiberglass thing? It's like, maybe, and it turned out to be a 53 or I think it was a 54 Chevy, the big convertible. I forget what it is, a 210 or whatever it is. But it was the big one. It wasn't a Corvette, but he was kind of insinuating it was a Corvette, and I'm like, it was a cool car, and I have nothing against it, but I definitely have people that don't in the 80s, did you know they had a Pontiac Le Mans little front-wheel drive car?
No.
And I've actually had a guy goes, oh, yeah, my friend has a Pontiac Le Mans. And I'm like, that's cool. GTO, based with the GTO, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Well, where is it? Oh, it's right down the road, blah, 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 make a right. Drove down there, and there in the guy's backyard was a Pontiac Le Mans from, 1986. And I'm like, that's cool, but not my kind of cool, I think. I appreciate the guy kept it. It's probably the last one remaining in the country, but not really up my street.
Well, like you said, you write for Hot Rod magazine. You got I need to get that because I've made that mistake in the past. Are you writing for the magazine or the online bit? Because I think last time we talked, you were writing for the online part of it, right?
Oh no, I write for the actual magazine every month. I've been doing that for 5 years now. And I also do freelance work for other magazines. Like I've been in Mustangs Monthly. I've been in Muscle Car Review a bunch. What else? Super Chevy. So I do a lot of the 10 magazine products in my travels.
So it's one of these things where I like trying to figure out like, as far as it comes from you, we're talking a bit about like what you find interesting and compelling. Is this something now where, you've seen, all these old muscle cars at every state that they could possibly be in, from dilapidated to pristine examples? Is it getting to the point where it's getting a little old hat and now you're finding yourself getting into the more oddball stuff? Like if there was let me kind of break it down into a little bit better question. If you could have a vehicle to put in your garage just for the aesthetic value of it, would it be something like these, barn finds you're finding, or, would it be something a little bit more oddball and newer?
Oh no, man. I still love muscle cars to my heart's content. Unfortunately, I have a new Challenger that I drive every day, and I have an old Challenger in my garage that, unfortunately, as I say, as a joke, is I'm not just a barn finder. I'm also a customer. I have a 71 Challenger in my garage that's been sitting in there for 15 years, and I've never really driven it more than a mile or so. And that just keeps that flame alive that someday I'll be able to. I want a car that I can jump in and drive. Like, I want to be able to replace my 2009 Challenger with my 71. And I've driven muscle cars of all shapes and sizes through the years, and there's nothing like them. I mean, yeah, they're little pokey. I mean, they're not pokey. They're, the suspensions might not be the greatest, and they might not, have the greatest fuel economy, but there's just something to them that just gets to the heart of my soul and makes me appreciate them, especially the barn. I wish I had the same passion in muscle cars I have now that I did 15 years ago. I never would have bought my car. I wish I could have a daily driver muscle car. I wish I could have that Challenger that's, it's not perfect. You can drive it all around the country. The paint, you don't have to worry about the paint. A lot of like the stuff that the roadkill guys are doing, or ratty muscle cars, that kind of stuff. But it's just, they're so cool and they're so unique. You can't go wrong with them in my mind.
Yeah. It is, we're kind of getting to this point of like, there's like two schools of like muscle car enthusiasts now. And there's the ones who kind of show up and they got the, I would say there's the two main camps. You got the ones who won't drive it and the ones who will drive it. And like, that breaks down into like, pro street mod and all that stuff. And then you got the people who are like, this one's kind of ratty. And then on the flip side, you got the people who are like, this is an all original numbers matching vehicle. And I got the sheet and I don't ever touch it. Like, don't even look at it. Like, I don't even like bringing it out of the house. So.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. And then, unfortunately, there's a big divide coming between them. And people are, the guys who drive the cars, I can get actively upset with the guys that don't, because these are cars. In my opinion, they are made to be driven. And while I do understand if you own that, $500,000 Hemi Cuda, and, it's all original, and it's only been original once, okay, I can understand you not wanting to drive it, but do something with it. It's sitting in the garage in a bubble. How are you enjoying it? I just read an article, was it yesterday, or it was a forum post, that the guy's selling a brand new Buick GN with like 7 miles on it, and it's been sitting in his garage for, what is it now, 35 years?
Yeah.
He barely made money on it, or he's going to barely make money on it. GN's never brought the money. There are a few exceptions, but Buick GNs don't bring the money that, a Hemi Cuda does or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So
it's like, what enjoyment do you get out of a car sitting in your garage for 35 years and you're afraid to touch it?
Yeah. Well,
I much rather. What's up?
I was just saying, it's almost like a crime against the culture. Like, you're taking these things. There's a lot of people like who speculate on car values, and they'll buy like a new Ford GT, or they'll find an old numbers matching Hemi Cuda. They'll throw it in a storage container with a dehumidifier and lock it away for 20 years and hope that it accrues in value. And it's like, that's not what that, like, you're taking this vehicle that no one's going to be able to see for the next 20 years just because it's going to go up in value because no one's ever seen one. And it just seems a little bit like, again, I'm with you. I understand why people do it, but on the flip side of it, it's you're stealing from our culture. I don't know. Like it's a crime almost in my mind.
It's absolutely, it's like taking, like, as an example, there's a few cars, like the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals in Chicago. I do the barn find display, but we have cars that come there that never see the light of day outside of this show. As an example, we had 27 real Hemi e-body convertibles at the show a few years ago. There's never been that many cars, Hemi Cuda convertibles and Hemi Challenger convertibles in one place, and there probably won't be again. But you're absolutely right. It's like taking the Mona Lisa or, the Venus de Milo and taking it and putting it in your garage so people can't even appreciate looking at them. Thankfully, there's museums like the Wellborn Museum or the Gilmore where these things are at least on display. But, like, what good did that GN do sitting in the garage? That's why I do, like, Hot Rod Power Tour, and I drive around the country, and I can't stand these car shows, especially the local ones anymore, where the guys, sit there with their cars. They literally will only drive them a block. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah. No, it's it's counterintuitive too, because I was thinking about it. If you own that Hemi Cuda, the only way that things can go up in value is if the next generation wants it, because by a certain point it's going to peak out and then it's not going to be worth anymore. And the only way to make people aware of it and want it is for them to be able to see it. And if it's locked away, that doesn't work. So it's like, when is that going to hit peak value?
I agree in some form, but I don't see that in all cases. As an example, let's use the Hemi Cuda. I think there will always be the Hemi Cudas. Let's say, as an example, will always go up. Even they were originally cool. They will always be cool. They always have that stigma, just like Tri-5 Chevys. Yeah, there are some Tri-5 Chevys that have gone down in value, but for the most part, they just keep on going up and up very, steadily, even though we're now 50, 60 years removed. But the Model A's, the Model T's, the original ones, those are the ones that have dropped significantly in value because, unless it's a hot rod. Hot rods, you see them going for crazy money nowadays because they're cool. But I think there'll definitely be a split here coming up where, like I said, Hemi Cudas and all that, they'll start going up with the regular muscle cars, the Barracuda 3 teen cars, the plain Jane Chevelles. Those will start leveling off or, come down to a reasonable level. Hopefully here in the future when I'm still alive.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be very interesting because I do think, that's the same reason you're seeing these 80s cars go up in value now, because that's the next generation. And even some really random 90s cars are starting to creep up in value. It's weird, but it makes sense when you think about it. And so I'm curious, I got to know, what are you going to be driving on the Hot Rod Power Tour?
Unfortunately, I'll be driving my 2009 Challenger RT. My 71 is nowhere near. I need a lot of work on my 71. If it was ready and drivable, I would drive it in a heartbeat. But on the other flip side is I don't just do the power tour. I lead a group of people across the country by myself. And it's not like 5, it's like 30, 40, 50 cars sometimes. So I need to have a reliable, stable car that I can lead people from. And right now, that's not my 71. And actually, my 2009 has 175,000 miles on it. So it's not like I'm treating this thing too easy either.
Yeah. But again, we talked about it before. I had a 2010 and a 2011, and if there's any car built for just taking you across the country in comfort and style, the Challenger's right up there. Not great on gas, but yeah. That's the downside.
No, recently, it's not that bad. When we do power in the mid-20s, maybe even high 20s usually, because we're cruising. We're not, going bad out of hell. So I'm usually in that sweet spot in the 35 to 55 range. So you usually just putts along.
Yeah.
It's when I put my foot down that I get into trouble.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's that car in a nutshell. So will you be doing any barn searching while you're on the tour, or is that a no-no?
I hope to be. I doubt it because of the schedule that we're going to be doing. I don't know if you've ever done Power Tour, but it's a very you meet up in the morning and you have, let's say, breakfast with your group, and then you travel for 5-6 hours. Then you get to the venue. You hang out at the venue for a few hours, and by that time you've been cooked. You're well roasted, and you just want to go back to a nice cold room. Fortunately for me, my time has allowed me that I will be going before and after Power Tour on some pretty good adventures that hopefully will bear some pretty cool fruit.
So, that's an interesting one. So you said it's all muscle cars in the current book. So is there a plan for what's coming up next? Are you going to be doing import stuff in barns?
No, nothing like that. In all my travels, I've only probably found a few dozen import cars of different styles and forms. Found a few E-types, found a few Porsches, found a Lamborghini, or not, found a Ferrari once, but nothing really nothing that I could fill out a book with. And right now, I think I'm done with the books for now. Really, I just want to hunker down and, just keep my YouTube stuff going and keep the magazine stuff going and concentrate on that for the next few years. And then who knows? Just with the last book, I had 60,000 images that I took over the last 3 years, roughly, and I can only put 125 of them in the book.
Yeah.
So there's I don't have an issue, filling out a book or two if I needed to.
So, now, what about, you said you did the Power Tour. Now, that's under the Motor Trend umbrella, right? Or am I getting all my magazines mixed up?
Oh, no. It's definitely, you're right. It's Hot Rod Magazine, which is part of the 10 company, which is part of Motor Trend and all that.
So is there a chance we'll see you on the 24 Hours of Lemons rallies they do? Because that's like a, walking, talking barn find going on.
I actually know one of the guys that runs that, and I don't have the mechanical dexterity to be able to do that. You'll more likely, I've been on a few roadkill episodes. That's more my kind of shenanigans. But, I do appreciate I do watch the coverage of the Lemons races and all that. So if I ever had the opportunity to get in on that, you never know. I might just pop in. Well, I know they just did one out here at my house.
Yeah. Well, the rally is fun. Actually, the rally, the one coming up in July, goes through Illinois because it starts in Michigan and goes around counterclockwise around the Great Lakes.
Oh, that's not really? No, I didn't hear. I knew they had the one on the West Coast. I knew they did the from Moscow again this year or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Now, the rally, that is something I could see myself doing. A friend of mine has an old Mercury Comet we thought about doing that with, and unfortunately he moved and things kind of fell apart. But absolutely, that would be really cool to get it to really pull a barn find out, and then to go do the Le Mans rally.
Yeah,
I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I broke down on the last one, so I only got to do 2 days of the retreat from Moscow last year. So I'm hoping to better my results this year during the Great Lakes mistake. Because so for those of you listening, I'm actually ditching the Volvo project and I'm going to the Fiero project, which there should be. I'm going to be picking up a Fiero, ironically from a guy who kept it in a barn. So slightly ironic there. It doesn't count as a barn find though.
Hey, you found it. You're finding it coming out of a barn. That's pretty close. If it's been sitting for more than 10 years, I consider it one with them. But that's cool. A Fiero though, you're gonna have fun with that.
Yeah. Well, it's a perfectly reliable car, right? Like much more so than a Volvo with a Nova motor in it. So
yeah, sure, let's go with that.
So when I was doing my little research for the interview, I kind of concentrated on the book aspect of it and kind of how I was going to deal with that. I did not know you had a YouTube thing. Can we talk a little bit about that and what you do over there?
Absolutely, man. It's basically the same thing that I do with the book and all that, except I do a video component of it. Within the last few years, I've been, with the Hemi Cuda and all that, I do a walk-around video. That one's not up on YouTube yet. That one, I have to wait until stuff's published. But that's basically what I do is, I walk around these barn finds and do video, explaining what the cars are and what the story behind them is and, that kind of stuff. And they've been very well received. A few of them are over 500,000 views. One's at 1.5 million views. And I've got a lot in the 100,000. And I have one that my most recent one, which I posted 2 weeks ago, is up to just under, it's at 80, 70,000, something like that. So there's definitely a market for it.
And where do people go to find it on YouTube? What do they type into the search bar?
You can type in my page is on YouTube, Auto Archaeology. So it's youtube.com/Auto Archaeology. But you can look up like barn find or type in Auto Archaeology, and I should come up pretty quickly. I think I have 40 videos up there, 50 videos, and they're not great. I'm not a great editor. I don't know music or anything like that. It's pretty bland, but the cars are cool, and they are true, legit cars that are sitting or been neglected or that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to get to the point where we're doing the? I could see this being good for your. This is Ike giving unsolicited advice on the podcast, where you do the blog thing, where you're like, I'm on my way to go look at this old car, and I'm here in the vehicle, and I'm eating like a hot dog and like a deep dish pizza. Like, are we going to be getting to that point?
Oh, actually, that's how I started out. Was I had a blog. I still do. I mean, I have a website and all that, and that's where I started. In the beginning was doing a blog about these adventures that I'd go on a much smaller scale. But I was starting to find some really cool stuff, and that's what got me noticed by the magazines and all that. And it's been downhill ever since, as I say.
Well, it's been a lot more rat infested, which for most people would be a bad thing, but for you, good thing. So.
Exactly. A little bit more, raccoon rabies and more raccoon poop than I've ever wanted to see in my entire life. But, it's definitely not been boring.
Yeah. Has there ever been a close call with, like, any particular critter? Like, maybe in Florida a python comes out?
No, but I mean, I've had it where, like, I opened up an engine, or I've opened up the hood, and there's a possum. And the possum just looks at me and goes, it hisses at me, and I'm like, oh, hi, Mr. Possum or Mrs. Here, let me just close this, and I close it, and I walk away. I mean, I've had those experiences before, but it's the one I just learned, well, not recently, but last year, actually 2 years ago, I was at Stevens Performance Junkyard. It's the largest Mopar junkyard in the country. Literally rows of Cudas and everything you can imagine. And I walked around that thing for 7 hours and didn't see the whole thing. And that was fine. Great time. Took video, took pictures, was in magazines. No problem. Not until in the February, I talked to the owners. They were at a show. I'm like, oh, yeah, you came at the right time. The copperheads and all that weren't out. I'm like, excuse me, what now? I go, oh, yeah, the rattlers and all that. You came right before they really became active. I'm like, wait, what? She's like, oh, yeah, they love hiding right those cars that you were bouncing around through and all that. I'm like, oh, that's great to know now. Don't go there in the summer. But yeah, she's like, oh yeah, you see the skins everywhere? I'm like, nope, never paid enough attention.
Yeah.
I'm like, good to know now. I don't hunt in the South very often, but yeah, that was an eye-opening experience to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that rattling noise? What's going on? Yeah, whatever. Just keep opening up stuff. No, it's fine.
Actually, probably the two craziest ones I've had were I was in a junkyard in Wisconsin. It was a packed junkyard. I mean, cars literally next to each other, on top of each other. And I came between two stacks of cars, and literally from me, probably not 4 feet away, was a deer just sleeping between these two cars. And I'm not a big. I mean, I'm a big guy. So I didn't think, I make enough noise, I thought, to, move people, for things to move away. No, this thing, oblivious to me, literally, I've never seen this thing. It literally jumped probably 10 feet in the air and just took off running away from me. Scared the living crud out of me, let me tell you. I just looked at it, it was this split, like, oh, there's a deer. Bam, it's gone. I was like, oh, crud. Oh, man, that one was probably the scariest actual incident. And this last weekend, I was at I don't know if you know Chevys, but I was at a 70 Chevelle SS LS5 454 4-speed convertible with air conditioning, and it's sitting in a guy's backyard, literally rusting into the ground. Wow. And I'm walking around it doing a video, and as I'm filming the video, I hear this rustle, and a cat leaps out of the convertible and then takes off into the woods. And I have it all on film, and I go, oh, bleep, there's a cat that has run past me. Oh, man, that scared me pretty good.
It's weird. I don't know what it is, but I was tinkering with the Challenger. This is years ago, and I used to live close to some woods, and I was underneath it, and I just dolly myself out from underneath it, and I found myself surrounded by deer, and I'm like, this is the oddest thing on the planet that's ever happened. And they kind of realized I was there around the same time they noticed, like I was like, okay, this is scary, and there is nothing weirder, like more kind of like what the hell just happened than just a bunch of deer just scattering on you for no good reason. Like, I don't know what was, like, you don't know how to react because it's not a predatory animal, but it might kick you and kill you. So it's like, I don't know what to do here. Yeah. So.
No, the fun, just like that, but the funniest one that I've ever had was I was at a guy's yard in Wisconsin looking at some cars, and here come these big birds towards us. And I'm like, what the heck are these? They didn't, I mean, I know turkeys and all that from where I live. I've seen them in big groups. Okay. No, he's like, oh, don't go near them. They're mean. I'm like, what the heck are they? They're peacocks. And I'm like, oh, plumes and all that? He's like, yeah, but they lose their feathers after whatever time, and they get mean. He's like, man, you don't want to mess with them. They will claw at you and all this stuff. And he's like, just don't look at them. Just walk away. And so the whole time we're walking through his yard, we had to keep ahead of the peacocks. I have pictures of them following us through this yard, and they eventually ran off. But he's like, yep, those are mean suckers. You hear them in the background, ah! Screaming at us. Oh, it was ridiculous.
They meow. That's the weirdest part about a peacock is they meow at you. Like,
yeah, they got this, rah! Yeah, it was weird. I can't do it.
It's like, wah, wah, like that. It's
exactly, that's exactly, yeah.
So,
but the funny, another friend of mine in Indiana, his family has wild peacocks, and they're like cats. Literally, I picked them. They walk up to us, and they're like nudging us. I'm like, they're not going to attack me. And these have full plumes and all that. It's like, oh no, this one's a sweetheart. You can go ahead and just pet it on its head. I'm petting a peacock. I'm like, this is the weirdest trip I've been on in a while. And did you know peacocks fly? Like, they fly.
Yeah.
I just thought they did a little jump. But, man, I saw one clear a football field. Never seen that in my life.
So, we're getting into strange shit that happened to Ike in childhood. So, Brookfield Zoo has peacocks that just wander the ground. Like,
yep.
And
I'll be there next Tuesday.
It's a beautiful zoo. It's well worth going to. I hope you have fun. But they have at least when I was a kid, they have a little hedge maze too. And I was on a field trip, and I wandered into the hedge maze, and I turned around, and there's just a peacock. This is why I know what the hell they sound like. There's just a peacock sitting there, the feathers on his tail just all rustling at me, just going, row, row. I'm like, I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do here. And then that guy, and you said they fly. That thing came like at me and then flew up over me. I'm like, I don't like what the hell just happened. Like it's the weirdest thing. And I regaled my wife and my sister-in-law with that story when we went to Brookfield Zoo recently, and I never heard the end of it. So like, you got cornered by a peacock. I'm like, those suckers are mean. Like, ugh,
they are. And have you ever seen their claws? Oh, there goes a McLaren in front of me.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's nice. Go. Sorry, tiny car. So.
Yeah.
But I appreciate all cool cars. It's not just muscle cars. But that's funny. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I researched them after I saw that first group with no feathers and all that. And, man, they're mean when they want to be.
Yeah, no, I did not foresee this podcast going this direction, but yeah, those things are, which is crazy to me because, bring it back to the muscle car thing, they named muscle cars after all sorts of weird, crazy animals. Probably the animal that muscle cars are most similar to is a peacock because they're big and they're showy, and those suckers can be mean if they want to.
That's true. I'm surprised there's no... What was it? What was the Camaro going to be? The Beaver? No, was it the Dodge Demon? Yeah, no, they had some... That would have been an appropriately named car. Mm-hmm. Especially in I could see Plymouth doing that.
Yeah.
Like we know with their Panther Pink and Plum Crazy Purple and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I could see a Plymouth Peacock.
Yeah. Plymouth.
Even rhymes.
Yeah, Plymouth Peacock, and then you get yourself a big spoiler that's multicolored and painted like the peacock feathers. It works out perfect. They had a Roadrunner, for Pete's sake. So, I mean, you could do it should have been a peacock. I need a time machine. I need to go yell at 70s Mopar. Yeah.
Y'all. So tuck away that 71 Hemi in an old mine somewhere for Marty to dig up.
Yeah.
And go save the doctor.
Mm-hmm. Wait,
never know.
Yeah, how was your name on this title if you didn't exist until 20 years after the car was built? Shut up, that's how. So.
Yeah. Oh, man, Back to the Future. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Still one of the best movies ever, though.
Well, now, have you had a DeLorean in Barn Find?
I have. I've actually... They're not in the book because they don't fit in the muscle cars and they don't fit into, like, they're cool, but they're, kind of... There may have been one in the first book. I don't remember offhand. It's been a while since I've gone through the first one, but I found a real true DeLorean sitting in a backyard, 4 flat tires, the whole bit, and it was bad. Those.
So we lost audio here for just a second, and then we pick it back up right from where we were.
But yeah, Back to the Future, great movie. I did find DeLorean 2 times. And same thing, but with they have a fiberglass tub.
Yeah. With
kind of like a steel framework and all that. Those those aren't great for sitting on the ground and all that. And that was the biggest issue I saw was these things they're really just falling away in pieces, which is really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not rusting so much as like dissolving, which is.
Yeah, they're just disintegrating around them, which is really sad. Mm-hmm. But fortunately, there's that company out in I think Texas that literally has the entire old inventory, so anything you need for them, you can get. Mm-hmm. But they're so underpowered. I remember reading the history of Back to the Future with all the stuff on the car in the first movie. It wouldn't actually reach 88 miles per hour.
No. Yeah, it could barely reach 88 when it was new with nothing in it. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, who in the hell put a Renault little 6-cylinder or what is it, 4-cylinder?
Yeah. It's an R. What is it? It's a Renault, Peugeot, or I forget what it is, but it's like an RBV. It's like Renault, someone else, and Volvo teamed up to build a 6-cylinder. Turns out that's not such a great idea. So.
That is true. That is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although I've recently found out that it held the speed record. That motor held the speed record on the Le Mans or on the Mulsanne Straight for the longest time, and that's the car Bugatti was actually designed to beat on the straight, which is crazy to me.
Really?
Yeah, not a DeLorean, but that motor that was in a DeLorean. Some engineers twin turbocharged it, put it into like a Le Mans race, or like boosted it up to 1,000, and like, we're not going to win the race, but we can set a record on the straight, and that's exactly what they did.
Wow, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. I did not know that until recently. Yeah, yeah.
Well, like, did you know that the Buick Aluminum 215, they sold it to like British Leyland or something like that, and it was used all the way up until the 2000s. In like Land Rovers and all that, and stuff interchanges between them?
No, I did not. That's crazy. I knew it was some American designed car. I didn't know what stuff was interchangeable. Yeah,
a friend of mine he's the number one in 1962 and 63 or 63, 64. Oldsmobile did a car called the Jetfire, and I found the only known original 4-speed Jetfire. 62 Jetfire in existence, or 63. And this guy bought it. So him and I became good friends, and he now has 4 Jetfires. But the cool thing is I think the turbo Corvair was like out a month before the Jetfire, but it's a factory turbo with this aluminum 215 V8. And it wasn't great. It didn't sell great. They had to have this water methanol injection system that was terrible. Most of them were just replaced with carburetors. and the engine ended up being a dud, so they sold it to British Leyland or whoever it was. One of the British companies, like that, they put them in Rovers, they put them in Land Rovers, and they were literally used up until I think the 2000s in a bunch of different cars. But my friend actually can still go to, I think maybe like the water pump center. So there's a few parts that still interchange with the original Buick design, which is just crazy to me after 40, whatever it is, 50 years now.
Yeah, that's nuts. It's crazy to me. Well, like the fact that I found out like most Chevy V8s have the same bell housing bolt pattern, which is like you can take something from 62, or I think it actually starts in like 68 or 69, and you can bolt it up to an LS1, and there's no issue. It's like, that's crazy to me. So. Yep. Well,
same with Mopars. Every small block, within reason, from the 273 all the way to the modern Hemi, will bolt up to a 727 or a 904.
Huh. Yeah,
you can literally take with an adapter plate a brand new Hemi and some other odds and ends, and bolt it up to the 727 in your 71 Challenger or whatever, and it will bolt right up. I think one bolt hole isn't used. There's like one bolt hole at the very top, I think, on the original 727s that aren't used on the new Hemis, but they bolt right up.
I love that stuff. So, yeah, and then Ford just makes everything difficult for some reason. So, I love them, but they treat me wrong. Well, I'm curious. So let's flash forward. I'm curious about your thought on this one. I want you to get in your time machine, and I want you to flash, 60 years into the future, maybe 50 years into the future, and like, what do you think, is going to be kind of the cool cars that are going to be, left in barns then? Because, part of the reason the cars went into barns nowadays is because people were like, well, I'll just put it in the barn and it'll just kind of sit there until I can get around to fixing on it. Like, you're thinking like, will it be performance cars? Because, like, I don't think anyone who buys a new Corvette is going to be the type of guy who goes, oh, I'm going to put it in the barn because I can work on it. It's going to be like, well, I mean, they're too reliable now. So, like, what's going to be left in these barns?
But that's the other issue is electronics.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem in the future. Even now, with my car with 175,000 miles, things are kind of, they're fine. There's no problems. I do not have any issues with driving this thing across the country, but I know once things start going, once the ECM starts going, my 2008 through 2010 Challengers are unique. After 2010, they did a redesign of the electrical system, the interiors, and all that. So in 10, 15 years, whatever, 50, like you said, 60 years, my car is kind of cool. It's a classic. It's the first grouping of the classic cars. It's the B5 blue with the classic rims, the classic blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of desirable. I know people who have put these cars away. But what's going to happen in 60 years to the electronics? They're not made to last. And in 60 years, they're going to be real hinky, and there's going to be a problem. I think what's going to be desirable in the future will be the cars that they're like the really cheap cars, the really cheap fast cars. There will still be a place for muscle cars and all that, like my Challenger and all that. But I don't think, but now with the next generations, not even possibly even needing cars, everything's going to change, which is good and bad. So I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting time to say the least. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be extra difficult if something's found in a barn to get it up and running, I think, just because it's going to have, when the mice go through the electrical on a, 71 Hemi, it's like, like a couple dozen wires at the most, realistically, to get it back up and running. Whereas with a, I'll put my, even just a normal Mustang GT into the barn because I'll fix it up. And then flash forward 10 years and the rats have eaten all the wires in it. And now you're looking at like CAN buses and shit like that to try and get it running, and it's just not going to work. So.
Oh, it's even worse than that. Perfect example is my car. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I originally in this car had push button start.
Yeah.
And without my key, the car will not start in any shape or form. That's bad. That's bad in and of itself, but it gets even worse. Like the push button start had this little box that's buried somewhere in the dash. That if that box doesn't work, I have to literally pop off the button and use my key like a normal key.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what happened. That box went bad in my car after 60,000 miles. To just replace the box, it wasn't under warranty. To replace the box, to program it, and everything that's associated with that, $800.
Ooh.
And the only thing that box did was accept the signal from the push button and my remote. That's the only thing it did in the entire system. It doesn't control lights. So just think about that.
Yeah.
One little thing can cause all these issues. And now, when the parts are readily available, is $800.
Mm.
But like I said, think about in 10, 20, 30 years, this car's been sitting in a barn. The rats have eaten at it. Everything might be perfect, but the key fob's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows where the key fob is? I mean, it's going to be a very difficult time in the next 60 years.
Mm-hmm. Which actually might bring back to the point of like the cars that are going to continue to be desirable are going to be the cars like the, from the dawn of automotive, existence to like the late 70s, maybe a couple early 80s cars where there's not much that, can go wrong with them. And when it does, you can fix it with some baling wire and some hay if you really need to. So,
but unfortunately, those are getting. Just think 1980.
Yeah.
That's almost 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And those cars are just getting priced out of the market for the young enthusiasts in general.
Yep.
I mean, you're really getting to, the 1983 Chevy Malibus and all that. I mean, they're cool. I have nothing against. I love the 79 Malibu. Those are cool. But man, I mean, you're really going to the end of the line with the cool muscle cars that people can actually easily work on, and that's what really sucks. And that's why kids went to imports. Yeah. They were cheap and reliable, and you could literally pick them up for $500, drop $500 in them, and have a neat little car within reason.
Yeah, no, you're right. And to that end too, like Toyota and Honda held on to carburetors and carburetors and distributors for longer, I think, than weirdly the domestics did. And I think that might be their saving grace when it comes to the collector market, because I think like even a 93 Civic still has a distributor in it. I think it has like intake injection, not like port injection or whatever, but it's not a terribly complicated system, and that's going to be easy to fix even 50, 20 years from now. So
absolutely. Well, just like Dodge kept the original small block within reason design up until 2002, 2003, in the Durangos and the trucks and all that. And you can within reason, you can take anything from a 2001 Magnum 318, and within reason bolted on a 71 318, and get better performance and all that. But you're absolutely right. Then they started phasing them out. Then they went to coil packs and distribution blocks and all that, and it definitely went away from the ease of use.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question. If you had to buy a car that let's say you get one car the rest of your life, from now, or we'll go from when it was new, so whatever age that would have been when you got it, to the end of time until you leave this mortal coil, and you got to do all the maintenance on it yourself. What vehicle would you pick?
I probably would go with like a 69 Charger or something, because it's advanced enough that you have, within reason, electronic ignition and all that. You're getting away from points and, the technology that just really was, they work, but you have the option of disc brakes. You have the option of a decent, the there's sway bars and, big 11-inch drum brakes, and the interiors were nice, and you had a full gauge cluster. That kind of stuff you can work with. I would gladly turn a 69 Charger into a daily driver and just go beat on it, because within reason you can, if you have a 3-3 in it or even a Hemi or whatever, you can drop in a different engine pretty quickly, as long as the engines are available.
Yeah. So
I'd have to say like a B-body Mopar, even an E-body. A-bodies I don't fit in very well. Or how about a big C-body, like a 7300? Ooh, those would be cool.
Mm.
But or even a Chevelle, like a 70 Chevelle or an El Camino. There you got the Trar thing, where you could actually haul like 2x4s and plywood. So I really think I would go with some form of muscle car as a daily driver, because you can have fun and enjoy it and not have to worry about too much stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, that's something, like, the world got hit by an EMP. Well, I got a manual transmission and I have the most basic electronics. This thing will run for forever. So as long as you treat it right, maybe it doesn't start up so well in the winter, but who cares?
But those run pretty well even in the winter. I mean, my dad had taxi cabs in Chicago, and he had everything from satellite 4-doors to Aspens, and I mean, they never give any problems in the winter. But yeah, I think that's the perfect sweet spot for technology and ease of use, because you're not going, with it's alternators, it's not generators, where you have to go, those generator issues. It's not, just post-war where the technology is, not the greatest, or it's not even pre-war Model A's and all that, because they have their own set of problems.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely, and it's not the, the smog air, where you got to worry about, all those different smog pipes and vacuum lines and all the crazy stuff. It's just that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I wonder, I'm going to have to maybe do some research into it. I wonder what the cheapest car you could really get from that generation and find fairly easily would be.
Right about now, probably like you can get a 4-door Dart. I mean, it's not a muscle car, but you can get a 4-door slant 6 Dart for $1,000 or $2 still nowadays. It might be a 72 or up, but I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's not, it's not a Dodge Dart Swinger or a 340, but even those, I know a friend of mine who's selling an original 340 Dart Swinger. Doesn't have the original 340, but it's a solid car for like $8,000. I mean, that's not saying it's cheap, but it's not, a $30,000, 70 Barracuda.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think I actually just saw on because I do what every automotive enthusiast does. You spend your free hours on Craigslist searching at cars you're never going to buy. I think I saw someone selling a 72 4-door Dart, and it was right around $1,500. It's like, that's a pretty good deal for that car. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately, my secret desire is for a 1970, early 70s, late 60s Dodge Travco motorhome. So I spend an inordinate amount of time looking for those on Craigslist.
That's got the big block in it, right?
Yep. Some of them had small blocks. Most of them had big blocks, but they look like a Twinkie on wheels, and they're just so cool in my opinion. That's my. If I ever had like an infinite budget, I'd have a Travco pulling a trailer with like a 69 Charger on it. I would drive around the country looking for old cars in that.
Yeah, that would be the life. I mean, what else? What more do you need really beyond that?
Exactly. I mean, you're traveling in a cool RV with a cool car to go find cooler cars. Mm-hmm. It covers all the bases.
Yep. It's cars, and more cars. And if there's any time left, maybe even some more cars. So.
And good food. You can't go wrong with, traveling around the country finding good food.
This is true.
I can't wait for Power Tour. I'm going to the best pancakes in the world are in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that is. The South knows, I berate on them a lot, but I will say this. The South knows breakfast, except for chicken and waffles. Don't get me started on that. But they do good breakfast down there. Yeah.
Yes, they do, man. I found this place in Chattanooga, a little mom and pop place called Aretha Frankenstein. The pancakes are like bread. Literally, the way they cook it, the pancakes rise. I have pictures of the pancakes every time I go there. Each stack of each thing of pancakes, one flapjack is thicker than my thumb. And I got a fat thumb. Oh my God, they're incredible.
Oh,
that's another thing that I love doing is not when I travel. Is I go to these mom and pop places. I try not to eat, at chain restaurants and all that. I want to, really feel where I'm going and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is I'm being part. Like that's another thing is I'll go to these little small town restaurants and be like, hey, anyone know of anything cool?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good source too because there's always an old dude hanging around everywhere. Like, I don't know why it is. In those small towns, there's always like, that's Carl. He comes around and he talks our ears off for 4 hours. Like, never buys anything but a coffee. But, he's good people. Or if you're in the South, he bless his heart. Yeah. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I love doing that.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I tell
people, I have no dignity, so I go talk to anyone.
Yeah, you're talking to me right now. That's just proof. So,
you're famous. It's an honor to be talking to you, sir.
No, I don't think famous is a good word. I think.
Yeah, I'm infamous. You're famous.
Nah, I just talk to people who are more important to myself, and that gets me people to listen. So that's how that works. That's why it's the Untitled Car Show, because it's not my story, it's the guest story. And that's how we learn about peacocks and pancakes, which is going to make an awesome title for this episode. So,
barn finds, peacocks, and pancakes.
Yeah.
The trifecta.
Oh, man. It is a absolute delight to talk to you, as always, Ryan. We're getting to the point where I'm going to have to call it quits here. Let's tell everyone where they can find your book and where they can find all your social media stuff and YouTube stuff.
No problem. Well, you can find my book. It's on Amazon. It's on BarnesandNobles.com, but you can find it in some locations in person. It's like I said, it's called Muscle Car Barn Finds. I'm on YouTube at Auto Archaeology, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook under The Auto Archaeologist, and you can read my stuff every month in Hot Rod Magazine.
And again, some of the best camera work, of anything, to be perfectly honest. You find a way to make these vehicles. It's like, when you're watching, cooking show and they're, showing the pancakes go on and they call it like car porn or they call it, food porn. Like yours is barn find porn. Like it's just, you're finding these ways of making these cars that are dilapidated. You bring out their inner essence and their inner beauty. And I don't know, how you manage to crystallize that. I think in our hours of talking to each other, I think it kind of comes down to there's this genuine love of vehicles that you have. And I think that just kind of shows in everything you do. And I think people need to follow you on all the media that they possibly can. And they need to go out and they need to buy the magazine and get the subscription because it's worth it. And go get the book. Because the more we buy of his book.
I appreciate it. I really do. It gives me goosebumps to actually hear that people enjoy the shenanigans that I put up online. I post daily online. Every day I post at least one picture on my Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, you're basically the reason I have Instagram. Like just so you know, I don't know quite how it works beyond like I can't figure out how it works for me, but I'm like, I follow this guy. He does some great stuff, and it's worth watching you just on there. And pretty much you're the reason I have Instagram. So I don't know if I should be thanking you or not for that, but
like I said, I am the pathway to a very dark place.
Yeah, a pathway to peacocks and pancakes, a dark place.
Exactly. Now your waist is going to go up 12 sizes and now you're going to have flashbacks of that peacock attack from when you were a child.
Oh, man, that every time.
It's just been a great influence on your life. I'm happy to hear that.
Oh, man. Ryan, it is a delight. I'm going to have to say goodbye to you off air. Everyone who's listening, go check out his stuff, and I'm going to be right back with you all. All right, everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you like what you hear, make sure you tell a friend, loved one, coworker. Yeah, it's the best way for us to grow as a show. Give us a rating on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this, and just spread the word. Yeah, and make sure you check out Ryan's stuff. So have a good night, have a good evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is there. Thank you so much for listening.